Mr. Hankinson, I think, to me, you made one of the most important points of this hearing when it comes to the challenges of vetting Afghan nationals and from a war-torn country like Afghanistan, controlled by a terrorist organization like the Taliban. And that is the assumption of the federal government that no information basically meant these Afghan nationals were fine to come into the country, even though fraud is rampant, even though there may be no record because of the circumstances of that individual who don't even know their date of birth. I don't know how you actually identify in a database who a person is if you don't have some of the basic biographical information. But would you just repeat or restate your concerns about considering the absence of evidence of adequate vetting?
Thank you for the question. Indeed, I think CBP's guidance officially during the crisis when they were bringing people in the thousands was, in the absence of derogatory information, let them in. In other words, no information, we would assume, means there is no information, which is probably not true. It may be true in many cases, but when you don't have an accurate birthday, you don't have an accurate name, and you know that there are no accurate criminal records. I mean, to talk about Afghan databases, you could talk about Afghan rocket ships. There are certain things that just don't exist in the remote parts of the country, and many other countries, some of which I've served in. So vetting is only as good as the databases and the information from which you're pinging. And assuming that there's nothing there because there's no record in a U.S. database is a mistake.
And Ms. Marzouk, I wanted to get you to expand a little bit about the concerns that of funneling money to organizations like CARE. You mentioned that CARE was an unindicted co-conspirator in a 2008 case involving the Holy Land Foundation in Texas. It involved terrorist financing and related to Hamas, a designated proxy of Iran and a terrorist group. Do you believe that that sort of funding to non-governmental organizations represents a failure of adequate and verifiable vetting?
I believe that there was a federal oversight problem after 9/11. All federal contracts were supposed to have terrorism riders to make sure that the federal money that we were handing out did not go to support terrorism. And the way that this structure was set up, the federal government gave it to the states. When the states gave that money to nonprofits, those terrorism riders were not present and there was not sufficient oversight.
So just to repeat what Senator Hawley said in his question, rhetorical question, I guess, is that we're asking an organization with ties to terrorism to vet Afghan nationals for terrorist ties. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, as I mentioned in my testimony, in the application in California, CARE California touted their experience with inadmissibility grounds related to terrorism. They were saying that they could coach clients how to get around terrorism screening.
And as you may know, in November 2025, Governor Abbott, the governor of my state, Texas, designated CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization and transnational criminal organization. In this case, a state proclamation like this prohibits them from acquiring land in the state and authorizes heightened enforcement against affiliates. But there's also been allegations made about the promotion of things like Sharia law and exclusion of people who are not of the Muslim faith from various enclaves known in one instance as EPIC, which is a real estate development in the state. But do you have any idea whether the sort of diversion of funds to an organization like this, is that an isolated event?
I don't believe it to be isolated. I think it requires federal oversight to review all of the contracts that went from HHS to the states and then to the nonprofits, because as I explained, that money was purposefully obscured, and I believe that it is a systemic failure.
Well, of course, anybody who follows the news knows that the scandal now that's unfolding in Minnesota with regard to the Somali community and serious allegations of welfare fraud, accepting federal government funds and yet providing no services in response to those funds. Really, we don't have any way of knowing if that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so I agree with you, it bears further investigation, and I can assure you we will do that. Let me turn it over to Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Echo